Elugia used to be a regular dude, but one day, he finds himself transformed into a dragon egg, and he's in the same situation as Doofenshmirtz because neither of his parents showed up for his birth. The first thing he sees is a screen, and he is informed by a voice in his head that his status window will display information about his abilities, which seems handy, but then Elugia realizes he should be concerned about the fact that he's hearing a voice in his head. The voice explains that she is part of the skill, Divine Voice, and her job is to explain things involving his status and abilities. He asks if this world is a game of some kind, but the voice tells him she can't provide that information since the Divine Voice skill is still only level 1. Elugia then asks if she can at least tell him where he is, but the voice once again refuses to answer any non-status related questions, and Elugia gets so frustrated that his egg ends up rolling off a cliff. By the time he stops, the system informs him that he just received a falling damage resistance ability, but it came at a cost because his HP went down by 1 point, and when you've only got 5 HP, that's a pretty big deal. Elugia ends up rolling over to the edge of a lake, and there, he sees his reflection for the first time in this world, and this is when he realizes that he is a literal egg. The system informs him that he is a dragon egg, an F-rank monster, and if his shell is somehow destroyed, he will die. Elugia is already upset about the situation, but to make things worse, the system tells him that dragon eggs are powerless, and single-digit IQs, so rolling around is pretty much all he can do right now. They do have the potential to become a fearsome dragon once they hatch, but if you've ever watched Nat Geo Wild, you know the odds of surviving without turning into a protein snack are really low. Elugia starts freaking out, and all this shaking causes him to start rolling down the hill, but he ends up falling off another ledge and his HP drops to 3, so he decides to stay put for the meantime because he can't risk taking any more damage. By nightfall, Elugia's HP has finally regenerated, so it's safe for him to start moving again. He breaks into a slow roll across the floor, and as he does so, he starts thinking about what his life as an egg is going to be like. Being an egg may suck, but sooner or later, he's going to hatch into a dragon and become extremely powerful, so he decides to make that his mission. However, as he is rolling through the forest, he ends up coming across another creature. He gets a little closer to take a look and finds out that this thing is called a dark worm, and according to its stat screen, it has the title of Egg Eater. Yeah, this isn't good. Elugia immediately starts rolling away for dear life, but at the speed the worm is chasing him, simply running away isn't going to be enough to get him out of this mess. The worm currently has 8 health points, which is more than Elugia's max health, so if he tries headbutting it, he's going to die first. Just then, he remembers that he received some fall damage resistance earlier today, so he decides to use that to his advantage and lures the worm over a nearby cliff before tricking it into jumping off with him. By the time they both hit the ground, Elugia is still in one piece, thanks to his fall resistance and the fact that he landed on top of the worm's body, so the system informs him that he has received 12 experience points for successfully killing the worm. As a result, he has leveled up and met the requirements for evolution, so the system then shows him the evolution tree and asks which path he would like to take, the baby dragon tree or the little dragon tree. Elugia has no idea what the difference between the two is, so the system starts explaining to him that little dragons are a dwarf species of dragon, but while they may be small compared to other dragons, it can still grow to around the size of a bear, and it also has a deadly fire-breathing ability. In contrast, the baby dragon doesn't really have much going for it aside from the fact that it has the potential to evolve into many different dragon species, but it does taste really good with soy sauce, so Elugia might end up in an episode of Delicious in Dungeon if he chooses that one. Elugia really isn't interested in becoming a meal, so the little dragon seems like the safest option to him, but just as he is about to choose, he hears a voice telling him that he needs to grow stronger and aim for the top. This voice was completely different from the system's voice, and he has no idea where it came from, but it seemed to be referencing his evolution choice. The little dragon may be the safest choice right now, but the baby dragon has more potential for growth down the line, so even if it may be a risky play, Elugia decides to go with the baby dragon evolution tree. After the evolution is complete, all of his stats go up by a decent amount, but his HP wasn't fully regenerated, so he still needs to rest to restore it. Just then, Elugia's stomach begins to rumble, and his eyes start wandering over to the worm's corpse because it looks really appetizing for some reason. Elugia assumes that this must be his baby dragon instinct at work because he would normally never consider eating a worm, but it's not like he has many options for food right now, so he decides to go for it, and it tastes just as bad as he thought it would. The next morning, Elugia wakes up after taking a nap, and his health has been fully restored, but he still has to deal with the fact that he's a baby dragon now. He has no idea why he was reincarnated into this world, who was responsible for it, or even who he was before he was reincarnated. He is fairly certain that he used to be human, but he can't remember any clear details of what his past life was like. Just then, Illusia notices a group of dark worms gathering behind him, and now that he is no longer an egg, he is able to fight back and slice them to bits one after the other. Killing all the worms earned him a ton of experience, so he was able to raise his level to 3 all in one go. This level jump allows him to access the baby fire breathing ability, so he uses it to kill even more worms until he eventually reaches level 7. He then continues farming worms until he cracks level 15, and with how quickly he has managed to level up, he can't wait to see what his next evolution will be. Just then, Illusia's stomach begins to growl, and he realizes that he's probably going to have to eat more of these worms if he wants to keep fighting at max strength, but these things are really gross. He wants to try eating something else instead, so he looks around and eventually spots some mushrooms on the ground that look pretty tasty, but then he is reminded why you never eat random forest mushrooms. Those things were riddled with poison, and he barely managed to survive just now, but it did grant him a poison-resistant skill, so it wasn't a complete waste of time. Illusia still doesn't want to eat the worms, so he decides to head out into the forest to look for some new prey, and a few minutes into his search, he spots a gray wolf. The wolf is bigger than he is, but Illusia's stats are higher, so he decides to go after it and starts running alongside the wolf. He then fire punches it to death, and after inspecting the corpse, he realizes that he can use his flames to grow the meat. A few minutes later, Illusia is holding a perfectly cooked piece of wolf meat, and it's the best thing he has tasted ever since arriving in this world. He wants to get more of it, so he decides to start hunting wolves exclusively so he can eat their meat once he is done for the day. Thanks to all his hard work, by evening Illusia has reached level 20, and his next evolution is set to take place once he reaches level 25. However, the rate at which he levels up slows down the higher his level gets, so it won't be as easy going forward. On the bright side, since he has been using his baby breath so often, he has gotten pretty good at grilling meat, so his food situation is solved. Though, he wishes he had someone to talk to besides the system since she never answers any of his important questions. Just then, Illusia hears voices coming from nearby in the forest, and he may not understand what is being said, but it means there are other people here, so he goes to check it out. The voices were coming from a group of humans, and Illusia wanted to go talk to them, but that would be difficult to do as a dragon. Individually, none of the humans are as strong as Illusia, but they do have the numbers advantage, so exposing himself to them might be risky, but he doesn't want to be alone forever, so he decides to go out anyway. Unfortunately, he forgot about the fact that baby dragon meat tastes great with soy sauce, so the second the adventurers see him, they immediately attack for an easy meal. He tries to tell them he doesn't want to fight, but he can't speak their language, so one of the humans slashes him across the chest, and the other uses a lightning spell to stun him. Illusia realizes this was a huge mistake, so he tries to run away, but the lightning has already made his legs go limp, so there's nothing he can do. The adventurers begin closing in to finish him off, but at the last second, the girl with him steps in to stop them because she feels bad for Illusia. The next time Illusia opens his eyes, he sees the girl healing his wounds, and he is sincerely grateful that she chose to defend him. The other two don't understand why she cares so much about a random dragon that could have been their meal for the night, but if she wants to keep it alive, they aren't going to stop her. Illusia takes a look at her stat screen and finds out that her name is Miria, and she is an Earth human. She's also using the last of her MP to heal him right now, and Illusia has already regained mobility in his legs, but he knows that Miria will likely leave once she realizes that he is healed, so he pretends to be hurt a little longer. Illusia still doesn't understand the words Miria is saying, but from listening to her, he received a skill called Greek language, and if he levels it up, then he will be able to understand her better. Just then, Illusia hears loud screams coming from further into the forest, and he realizes it must have been the other adventurers who were with Miria. For them to have screamed like that, there must be a ridiculously strong monster nearby, and if that's the case, there's no way they survive an encounter like that. Miria wants to go check on her friends, but Illusia grabs her coat to stop her because it's too dangerous. Especially since she has no MP left, but Miria doesn't understand the warning he's trying to give and runs off regardless. Illusia may not know what kind of monster is out there, but he knows for a fact that none of the humans can beat it, so he needs to go save them, but his legs are still a little numb, so it's hard for him to move. By the time he finally makes it all the way over to the side of the screams, he is shocked to find a giant C-rank rock dragon, and it has over 200 HP, which is way higher than the 30 HP Illusia has. Normally, he would turn around and run away as fast as he can because he doesn't want to fight this thing, but then he sees Miria collapse on the floor, and he doesn't want to leave her behind, so it looks like he has no choice but to stand his ground. He has no idea how he's supposed to beat a monster like that. Just then, the voice in Illusia's head starts yelling at him to run away if he wants to live, and Illusia knows the divine voice is right, but he can't just leave Miria to die after she saved his life a few minutes ago, so even if it puts his life at risk, he needs to do something. He reveals himself to draw the dragon's attention away from Miria, and as the dragon charged towards him, he uses his roll skill to dive out of the way before slamming into its face. After landing, Elugia notices one of Miria's teammates lying on the ground nearby, but his HP is already a big fat 0, so there's no helping him now. The other guy was a bit luckier since he's still got 5 HP in the tank, but he's still being crushed by a tree, so he won't last much longer. Elugia needs to do something quickly if he wants to save them, so he comes up with the idea to provoke the dragon even more by bouncing against its head and running away to get it to chase him. This way, he should be able to lead the dragon away from the people, and then circle back to rescue them. However, the dragon isn't as gullible as Elugia thought it would be, because instead of simply chasing him across the forest, it uses one of its skills to destroy the ground in front of Elugia and send him crashing to the ground. The dragon then lunges at him, so Elugia decides to fight back and throws a fire punch right into its mouth. He is really proud of himself because that attack actually did a significant amount of damage to the dragon, but a few moments later, to Elugia's horror, the dragon's health bar fills right back to the top as it regenerates itself. There's absolutely no way he is ever going to defeat this thing in his current state, so he needs to make his escape while the dragon is still distracted with its regeneration. However, he isn't capable of carrying both people at the same time, so he makes the tough decision to save Miria and leave the other guy behind, knowing damn well that he's going to become dragon food sooner or later. He manages to get Miria a good distance away, but her HP is still going down due to all her blood loss, so she won't survive much longer in this condition. Elugia wishes he could use healing magic to help her, but he doesn't have any skills of that nature, nor does he have a medical degree, so his best bet is to take her to a human settlement so they can treat her there. He smells the scent of humans coming from this direction, so he grabs Miria and starts carrying her over there, but along the way, he smells something very concerning. It's the scent of dozens of gray wolves closing in on him, and they are likely after Miria's body. He is eventually surrounded with nowhere left to run, so he is forced to put Miria down and face the wolves. A little while later, Miria regains consciousness briefly and catches a glimpse of Elugia fighting to keep her safe, but she is still too weak to move, so she passes out again soon after. Late into the night, Elugia is still carrying Miria, and his body is on the verge of giving out, but his efforts have finally paid off as he has finally made it to the human village. He starts yelling for someone to come out and save Miria, but he's still a dragon, so all the people hear is a monster roaring late at night, and when they come out to check what's going on, they find the monster carrying Miria's unconscious body. They immediately assume that Elugia is a threat and attack him, and no matter how much he tries to explain, they can't understand a word he is saying, so there's no point. He eventually realizes that there's nothing he can do to convince the human that he is not a threat, so he just sets Miria down and runs back into the forest to avoid causing any more trouble. Sometime later, Miria wakes up in bed and finds Mariel sitting next to her. She explains that Miria was badly injured, so she had to use a lot of white magic to heal her. She informs Miria that she was unconscious for around 2 days, and Miria doesn't remember much from the incident, so she assumes someone must have carried her back to the village. Mariel goes on to talk about how reckless it was for her to go wandering into the forest with only Duz and Gantz, and speaking of those two, Miria asks what happened to them. But Mariel doesn't have any good news to share. After they found Miria, they went searching for the others and discovered Gantz's dead body in the forest. As for Duz, they never found his body, but they did find a large splotch of blood on the ground near a tree, so it's safe to assume that he may have been eaten by a monster out there. Miria breaks down in tears at the realization that her friends are gone, and she blames herself for not stopping Duz from going on that expedition. Mariel tries to make her feel better by telling her Duz was always a hot-headed fool who couldn't listen to warnings, but Miria tells her she's wrong. Duz may have been rash, but he was a good guy, and he was always the first one to fight off monsters that threatened the village, so the children adored him. However, he valued his pride as a warrior a little too much, because one night, while at the bar, some random guy told him he wouldn't be able to defeat a rock dragon no matter how hard he tried, and he happened to take that personal because the next day, he decided that he was going to go out and defeat the rock dragon with Gantz. Miria tried to tell him it was a bad idea, but he was already dead set on his plan, so she ended up tagging along because she wanted to make sure he would come back alive, but that didn't work out so well. Mariel says it was Duz's own pride that got him killed, so Miria needs to make sure she never makes the same mistake. But that aside, she tells Miria that she did a good job making it back here on her own despite how bad her injuries were. Miria is surprised to hear Mariel say she got back on her own, because she is sure that she was unconscious the entire time. Mariel has no idea what she's talking about because she assumed Miria walked back to the village, at which point she was seen being attacked by a baby dragon, but she explains that she was knocked unconscious by the rock dragon deep in the forest, so there's no way she could have made it back on her own. She starts wondering if she might be misremembering the sequence of events, but just then, she recalls seeing Illusia fighting off the wolves, and she thinks he might have been the one who saved her, but she has no way of knowing since no one got a good look at the monster before it ran back into the woods. Meanwhile, Illusia has just woken up from a nap, and it looks like all his wounds have finally healed. He already knew that resting would help him recover, but he thinks it's crazy that he can heal from almost anything just by taking a nap. If he had been reborn as a human, it would probably take him a lot longer to heal, but speaking of healing, he wonders if Miria is doing alright now. He can't exactly go to the village to check on her since the villagers would attack him in sight, so he has no way of knowing if she managed to survive or not. He had thought he was stronger simply because he leveled up, but in reality, he is still just as powerful as he was when he was an egg. If he had been stronger, things might have turned out differently when he faced the dragon, and he may have been able to save the other guy as well, but there's no use dwelling on the past now, so he simply needs to focus on growing stronger from now on. Later that day, Illusia tracks down a colony of dark worms and prepares to use them as his personal XP farm. He begins a complete genocide on the entire dark worm colony, and by the time he is done, not a single worm is left alive, and he has officially risen to level 25, meaning he can finally evolve again. He immediately goes to sit by the lake to get comfortable, and asks the system to begin the evolution process. He is then asked to choose between 5 different evolution choices. They are all some variation of small dragon, and then there's the plate dragon, but Illusia doesn't really want to use that one. He had no idea what the difference is between any of them, so he asks the system for a little help, and it begins explaining what the difference in titles mean. With little dragons, they become strong very quickly, but they have a lower level cap, so they don't have much potential for growth in their later years. As for kid dragons, they are basically just more advanced versions of baby dragons, but they still retain the high growth potential of baby dragons, while mini dragons are kind of in between, with fewer potential evolutions, but a stable evolution tree. From the explanation he just got, Illusia thinks he should go with one of the kid dragon variants, but before he makes his choice, he asks for a detailed description of what each one can do. The system explains that mini dragons are a species with slow individual development and limited evolution choices, but good future prospects, and that sounds nice, but Illusia isn't a fan of the whole slow early development thing. Next is the mini angel dragon, and it is basically a protective spirit that swears to live for the sake of others. It can use strong healing magic, and that does sound appealing to Illusia, since he remembers how Miria used her healing magic, and it would be useful to have, but the mini angel dragon also has extremely limited combat potential, so it wouldn't be very useful in a fight, and he needs something that can survive this harsh forest. The next option is the kid dragon, and the system informs him that it is pretty much the same as his baby dragon form, but with all of his stats greatly increased. Likewise with the kid marble dragon, but the main difference there is that it possesses a mutation that gives it a polka dot pattern and a high affinity with magic. Illusia is leading toward the kid marble dragon on this one, since the idea of strong magic sounds really good to him, but then the system goes on to explain the details regarding the young plague dragon. It is the first stage of an evil dragon that spreads disaster, but Illusia stops the system right there because he doesn't want to be an evil dragon at all. People are already wary enough around him as it is, so if he becomes something with spreading disaster in its description, he's never going to make any friends. But just then, the system mentions that the plague dragon possesses the ability to transform into a human, and hearing that immediately gets him to reconsider his choice. If he can take on a human form, then he will finally be able to talk to other people and make friends, and even if it means he has to become an evil dragon, it might be worth it. That brings the episode to an